Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. Today we've got a review for you of Bravely Default, The Flying Fairy, I believe is the full title, HD for the Switch 2. This was a game that released first on the 3DS some years ago now, and we're going to have a look and see how this Switch 2 remaster holds up.
So should you be brave enough to give it a go, or does it default on its promises? Well, let's find out.
Enjoy your adventure with upgraded features.
So in terms of story then, Bravely Default is set in the world of Luxembourg. You have four main protagonists who eventually meet and become a team, and this team consists of Agnes, who is the Vestal of the Wind Crystal, Tiz, who sees his village destroyed, Ringabel, who's an amnesiac, and Edea, who is the daughter of a king who is trying to catch Agnes. It revolves around four crystals that are meant to keep order in the world, and obviously this equilibrium has been disrupted.
The cast are actually quite well designed. They have good interactions between each other, and I think particular mention has to go to Ringabel, who's a bit of a ponce at the start, isn't he? But then he really grows on you. Yeah,
Ringabel's kind of your comedy relief and tries to have a way with the ladies. It never really comes off, although they do warm to him as the game goes on. No spoilers, but it's a nice, charming tale with four very different characters that learn to respect each other as they face more together.
There's extra lore for those who want to delve into it in the form of small story segments that you can access with a on-screen notification of those.
Yeah, these do go on a little bit, I'll be honest, but if you've never played the game before and you want to just catch up on the characters' motivations or how they feel after a particular event, it's a nice addition to the more traditional storytelling. Let's move on to gameplay then, and this is a turn-based RPG, in some ways very traditional indeed. It's from Square Enix of course, and you can see the DNA of some of their previous works littered through all of the game's mechanics.
The Brave and Default mechanics being the most prevalent, how exactly does that work?
Yeah, so this is the part that is new, or was new when this first came out of course, and the way that this works is that when you get into a battle you can choose to brave, which means you can have an additional go, and you can do this up to 4 times, or you can default, which means you pass on that go and go into a defensive stance, but you save your goes up and you can then obviously use them later. If you do brave, you'll go into deficit up to -4, and then you'll have to wait that number of turns until you get back to 0 and can have your traditional turn-based goes again. There are other mechanics that we'll get to in a moment, but this is obviously it's the one the game was named after, and it's the most prominent, certainly early game.
What it does is it adds quite a bit of speed to some of those early battles as well. If you're trying to grind for experience and you're facing easy monsters, straight off the bat you can brave 3 times and essentially wipe out the whole monster team.
You can indeed. You could use a character that's more based around healing, say for example, and default for a few goes, take a few hits, and then be able to heal everyone a good few times at once, staying in credit, not going into a deficit, meaning that you won't then get into trouble later in the battle when you need to heal again.
Bravely Default has a very intricate job system.
That's right, so the jobs in this game are called asterisks, and you'll pick them up by defeating bosses as you move through the story. Each asterisk has a particular class to it, very much at this point as you would expect in any like say Final Fantasy games back in the day. Early game you'll have things like white mages, black mages, knights for example, and you can assign these to your characters once you've earned them. Where it starts to differ is that your character will earn XP as a person, and the job they currently have assigned to them will also level up separately. What this does is it unlocks new abilities for that particular job. At any point, provided you have the asterisk, you can change to another job, but you can set a secondary job at the same time, and doing this means that you'll have access to any of the abilities that you did unlock whilst maining that other job. This means that you can start to tap into both sets of jobs, and after a while you can really start to see which jobs go well together and come up with some hybrid moves that can do amazing damage or buff your team in ways that will make the end game, if not easier, at least much more strategic in what you can actually do.
Yeah, for players who like things like min-maxing, this really does tap into that and allows you, as Glen says, just massive customization when it comes to your combat, offensive or defensive capabilities.
I will go so far as to say that when I first played this back on the 3DS, it was one of the most innovative new features in an RPG I'd seen, and I think it holds up incredibly well to this day. If you're someone that's not massively into RPGs, it can alleviate some of the potential frustrations that people have with the genre.
Yep, there are many aspects of the game that were almost ahead of what Square then went on to do with other titles. One of those being the encounter rate of enemies for combat.
Yeah, so a while into the game, it does take a little while, you can reduce or increase the encounter rate of random battles. So this is traditional random battles. You don't see the enemies on screen, but you can reduce it down to say 50% or increase it up to 200% depending on what you want to do. If you're trying to escape from a dungeon to go and heal, say, you want to drop it down. If you want to grind for levels, you can increase it, of course. Now, you can also unlock the ability to completely turn them off. And again, this is very handy at times. Just bear in mind you don't want to be under leveled, so don't use it too much. But to do this in this particular version, you do have to unlock this by playing the new mini games that have been added for this Switch 2 version. I'll be honest, I don't think this is the best way of handling this. I don't remember exactly how it was done in the 3DS version. It's been a while, but I don't remember having to unlock it outside of the main game. If you did, fair enough. But I think this could have been handled better. It almost feels like forcing you to play the new mini games in order to get something that's actually quite handy for the main game.
The rest of the game's RPG structure is going to feel familiar. You have large towns that you move between, dungeons, caved areas, but also the ability to travel more quickly using things like airships.
Yeah, that's that DNA that I mentioned earlier running through the game, and each new town will bring new characters, new objectives, and ultimately new bosses where you'll earn those extra asterisks.
Unlike the original release that used Street Pass, this time round those towns will be populated with your friends and you'll be able to pass them and then they'll join a roster that's used in combat.
Yeah, so in the 3DS version, Street Pass was used in quite a clever way in that anyone that you met on the street and obviously had this game, you could then summon those people into battle and you can set, a powerful move that is your friendship move, if you like, and they would jump into battle and unleash this move on the enemy. As well as that, the people you met in Street Pass would then populate your village, which is kind of away but not from the main game. I mentioned at the beginning Tizzy's town being destroyed, or village, and you start to rebuild it in this additional part, and doing so will earn you extra items that you can then use in the main game. So rather than being a Street Pass mechanic this time round, it's done via your friend list, and it's nice actually to see them find a way of keeping this in the game when it, I suppose, would have been easier just to cut it out. For me, it's safe to say that this game has held up incredibly well. I think it's a great RPG. There is one negative that I want to say, but I need to be careful with how I word it. This is a very difficult thing to cover in a review, but I do think it's important to just mention it somehow. There is a part later on in the game where I feel that the way they handle it leads to the game becoming quite laborious for that final stretch. If I say any more, it will become a spoiler, and I don't want that. But I do think it's important just to mention that I do think it brings the gameplay score down, because almost the second half of the game doesn't feel quite as much fun. If you want to know exactly what it is, I'm sure you could Google Bravely Default annoying feature, something like that. It will tell you what it is. But yeah, just be aware there is a part where the game, in my opinion, does drag down.
Then you've got the two mini-games that they added for this version, primarily I think to showcase the Switch 2's functionality. The first of those is Ring a Bell's Panic Cruise, which sees you steering an airship, controlling all of the buttons and panels, moving using mouse mode, the camera, and firing cannons as well by pulling things. This actually feels quite good. A nice little addition.
Yeah, I found this fun. It was a bit like Mario Paint back in the day, where you had like a fly swatting game that just taught you how to use a mouse or how to be more accurate. It's a nice addition. The other one's more like a rhythm game, and I'll be honest, I didn't find that one much fun. I thought that was a bit weaker than the other game, but they are decent additions. My only real qualm with them is the fact that they've locked something behind them for the main game.
Yeah, I guess in one way you could see it as a positive that you get those mini game rewards where you earn tokens, but then the things that you unlock potentially you would like to be just by default. Things like the 0 encounter rate that Glen spoke of, there are special items, and there are also new entries in Dee's journal.
Moving on to controls, there's not a huge amount to say about it. The game does control as you would expect in terms of the turn-based combat, and most of it is absolutely fine. I will just say I feel its job system, or more the intricacies of the job system, are perhaps a little hidden away within the menus, and it does take a little getting used to in terms of just how many abilities and sub bits and extra skills that you can add to your character are available to you early on. You'll kind of stumble across them. There are cards that flash up that do explain some of this, but it just takes a bit of getting used to in terms of just how many menus there are.
If you play the original, then controls may feel a little tweaked. For example, there's a heal all button. You can hold B to dash now. And it does give you some visual things that weren't there before, like recommended level ranges for dungeons.
Gameplay, in my opinion, is still fantastic to this day. You've got Bravely Default 2, of course, on the original Switch, and there was another game that followed this one on the 3DS. But I think this one's still well worth playing. A couple of annoyances in some of the decisions made, but on the whole, I would say gameplay gets 18 out of 20. Controls, as I said, are fine. They do what they need to do, but the menus can feel a bit fiddly at times. They get 17 out of 20.
Visually, this one is running at a silky 60 frames per second, and it still looks lovely.
Yeah, you have a few different styles here. You have the chibi characters, you have some more realistic characters in the early game cutscenes, you have that lovely hand-drawn style and the kind of the watercolored painting feel of some of the villages, and you have a more traditional 3D sprite style on the overall world maps. I also like the fact that some of the towns were laid out differently. Some are more traditional top-down views, where some of the towns are displayed from side on as you make your way through them. It's just these little visual quirks that keep things interesting.
Now obviously this one is running at full resolution, it's native. Interestingly, it's one where the up-res, the improved performance, it doesn't highlight weaknesses. It actually shows how strong the original artistic design was.
Yeah, I remember back in the day thinking this looked great, and it still looks great today. And it's nice to get that 60 frames per second. I have a feeling the original ran at 30, although I may be wrong there. But either way, this new remastered version still looks great and could well have been a new release for, you know, what anyone would have known about it.
Overall, in terms of the visuals, yeah, really well presented, and the soundtrack has been reworked, sounds lovely.
The soundtrack is fantastic, it really is. You can listen to it for ages, and you will, of course. It's a long old game. It has those moments when you're getting into a battle where it ups the tempo. It has a lovely melody to it as you're walking through the fields on the overworld map. Everything feels tailor-made to the particular situation that you're in. And then that brings us on to the voice acting, which you'll have at times. And again, this is top-notch. Each of the characters have their own unique personalities, and this comes across very well in their voices, again with Ring a Bell being a standout.
Overall visuals and performance score 19 out of 20, while the sound and audio is equally good and also scores 19 out of 20. The game retails at £33.99 on the Nintendo Switch eShop, and in traditional Square Enix fashion, it is a beast of an RPG, around 40 to 50 hours of good content. The additions of the minigames could add in extra time, and then if you want to find and do all of the side content, you could easily push that closer to 100 hours.
Absolutely. The side content, I like the fact that you end up getting job asterisks from them, so they do feel worth pursuing. There is some grinding in this, something we didn't really mention in the gameplay section. The nature of the job system does negate it to a small degree, but you'll still find yourself having to do it at times. Take that as you will in terms of your enjoyment of that. And that part that I mentioned that I can't really elaborate on, for me, does just bring the experience down a tad, which is such a shame. But overall, this is still very good value for money.
Now, while there is a physical available for this one, we do have to say that there is a game keycard for that, which we really don't like, but we don't score based on that. We are scoring the digital release. So if you hate game keycards and you want to give value a 0 out of 20, then you can go ahead, but we are scoring the actual game.
Absolutely right. Yeah, as long as we mention it and let you know that's what you're looking at, I think that's our job done. If we start knocking a huge amount of points off games because of this silly new practice, every game's going to suffer in the future. So that's our stance on it. And with all that said, value gets 17 out of 20. To conclude, Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster is still a fantastic game. I haven't played this since I first completed it back on the 3DS, and I did wonder whether my opinion on it would change playing it so many years later. And I'm delighted to say that it just felt like a nice pair of shoes, nice and comfortable. You slip straight back into it, and after a while of reacquainting yourself with the job system, or experiencing it for the first time, of course, for me, it's one of the best innovations I've seen in a long time. Add into that the encounter rate, which you can drop completely to 0, which was fantastic. Who knows why they dropped that feature for the sequel, and this is one of the best RPGs, I think, in modern times. Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster gets a SwitchUp score of 90%.
Yeah, that was the first time I've experienced that game, and as someone who loves RPGs, I can honestly say this is one of the best games on Switch 2 at the moment. So if you're considering it, yeah, go right ahead.
Lovely stuff. Don't forget, if you are looking to pick it up, you can use our website switchup.gg to get your eShop card, and you'll get 5% of your purchase price back in cash back, and there's a link down there to Play Asia as well if you're looking to import any games. Again, you get 5% of your purchase price back there too. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.